Good evening, everyone. Happy December. Hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving. And this is actually the future Dan, so, as a precursor to this episode where we actually take a Figma layout and bring it into Webflow. As you see on the right here, I built out this pretty simple one-page site, and I did this for the actual tutorial. And then along the way, of course, issues arise while recording, and I did a little observation of like what went wrong and what I could do better. And so that's why I kind of want to include this little precursor tutorial in the beginning to just basically give the people what they want. And then if you want to just explore what I did in that working session, then you can continue on in the video because it still had some very useful lessons on how to create components in Webflow and overall just kind of like shifting the layouts to do what you need to do. But what actually happened was while I was creating the layout here, I was really wanting to use this plugin called basically Figma to Webflow. And what it would normally do is it allows you to copy basically a section that you auto layout to your heart's desire. And then you were able to copy that and bring it into Webflow to kind of import it. Now, it didn't do the greatest job at carrying the structure. Sometimes it'll create all these different classes, which if you watch further down the actual first video, you'll notice the problems that we had doing it. But it did basically save a lot of time of me having to create all the different little sections that I needed to come up with the layout. And for some reason, the plugin just stopped working 20 minutes in within the tutorial. And so luckily I kind of pivoted that working session to kind of show you guys how to create like this little section by itself by scratch. And so I wanted to kind of just pinpoint that in this first hopefully 20 minutes so that you guys can get the value from that in case the plugin doesn't work for you. If it does, then kudos for you. But let's get started, right? So what I'm going to do actually is, let me delete a few things here because I was just testing out what I wanted to do here. And so we are actually going to work on, you see on the left here, we're going to work on this character page here. And my buddy has a bunch of characters for his story. So more than often, this is type of a page that's going to be created a lot. And so what we're going to do is actually going to create a static page template. And so that just allows us to reuse this template for other characters that might be released in future books, or if you wanted to add more characters that were introduced in the previous books, then you could use this template. So I'm going to just create a character template. I'm going to skip all this other stuff. You don't really need to worry about that until like the later stages when you have to worry about SEO. And then as I click on the pages icon here, you can see that we are in our character template. So what's in our template? First of all, we're going to call this body a certain class. And we already have a class made. Again, in the later iteration of this tutorial, you'll see how we create classes that do the things we need to do. So we create classes called body-dark to automatically give our background color. Then you're going to see me pull up the components here on the left. And we've created basically some basic components for our website. I have shown this in the actual original tutorial, and I'll leave some like chapter marks so that you guys can find these specifically. So automatically we know this page is going to have a navigation, going to have a footer. All pages need a footer, and then it's going to have the CTA block. All right, so we almost basically have this site page almost created. We're just missing this one section. So if you think about websites, it's basically one big rectangle and is created by different sections. So we have this navigation, we have this what we call body section. I'm going to call this some type of callout section, and then footer section. So that's why by teaching you how to create one section, you basically know how to create a website, because it's just a pattern, and once you know how to do one section, you can do all of them. With a little caveat of some pages might look totally different from others, but hopefully when you're first beginning this, maybe this is something you're doing to learn, you won't get into super complicated stuff. So let's observe what we have on the left here. We have some overall section that's going to include this whole thing. So let's kind of like just do that step by step. I'm going to click this navigator here, and that's going to pop up basically the structure of this page. I'm going to pin this just to make it easier. Then you can see we have the navigation, CTA block, and footer. So in between the navigation and the CTA block is our main section. So I'm going to click add elements here, and basically you want to search for section. It's usually on the top here. Webflow does a good way of like telling you how to start your website. So I like to start with a section, and then we will add another element within that. Within that, there's always something called a container. There's going to be a lot of different reasons you would have this, but more so it's to contain the section to a certain width, just in case a person had either a big computer or small, real estate for their screen size. You can change the size of the container, which will help reduce the size or increase the size of your content based on their screen width. So we have the section, we have the container. And so inside the container is finally what we're going to call this. For now, we're going to call this character. You can just call it character about or something like that. So we're going to search for div. And div is essentially just a block of something that holds whatever. So we have our div block here, and I'm going to go to the top right here, and this is how we add styles, which I explained later on, and how you can manipulate that. And for this one, we will call it character about. Let's call it character lore, just to be a little bit more descriptive. And so within character lore, we can see that there's multiple things going on here. And what I did on this Figma layout is I broke it into basically three things. You have your basically the lore. So we're going to call that description. So let's add that in. So I'm going to add another div, and let's call that character description. Actually, let's rename that. Oh, no, description's fine. And then underneath that, you can see that we kind of have like a quote from them. So it's not part of the description, although we can put it in there. But what I like to do is, actually let's make it part of the description. It'll just make things easier. So once you click add, it'll probably reference what you last added, which is a good thing. So we're going to add a div, and then we're going to aptly name this character quote. So we have description, and within the description, we have the quote. Awesome. And then on the right here, we have the image. So knowing that the image and character description are on the same line, I don't want to be nested within each other. So if I increase the size of my navigator, you can see how this nesting starts to work. Where you have within a section, there's a container. Within a container, there's the lore. Within the lore, there's the description. But what we're calling the lore contains the description and the image. So I'm going to highlight lore here. That way, when I add an element here and click on div, let me move my mic a little bit. We will have a div block here, and then let's just call this character image. And let's go ahead and actually add an image in there. So I have it highlighted here. I'm going to search for image, add an image, and then we could actually upload an image. We already got it exported out. And there we go. Now, let's see, we'll just leave it there for now. Because we're going to try to responsibly resize this based on how it looks. But okay, now let's actually, what I like to do for any type of section is just putting the content in. That way it's just easier to visualize what's going on. So for the quotes, let's see, what do we have in here? In this quote, we basically have two types of text. We have the quote, and then we have, seems like, where it's coming from, so the quote source. And so I'm gonna click and add here, and I'm gonna look for text. Yeah. And so we have the text block. So we added one text block here, and what I will do is I will call this character quote saying. And then what I will do is actually copy this so that I can paste it here. And I'm going to do some rough styling here so that we can see what we're working with. So you can see I initiated dev mode. I believe all Figma accounts will have this access to it. But if not, you can just figure out the styles. So I can see this is basically going to be 24 pixels using Ubuntu. It's using color Y, 24. And line height of, looks like 36. I'm going to put that on the right there. Okay. And it looks like I have it centered aligned, so it's cool. And then now let's work on the other parts. So within the character quote, again, I'm gonna add an element. I'm gonna add a text block. And now this one, I'm gonna call it quotes. I'm gonna keep it in line with how everything is named. So character quote reference, or maybe citation. All right. Again, I'm going to copy what the actual saying is. And then here I can see that its color is that. But before I wanted to change the color, oh, okay. I already put the class name. So we know it's going to be Ubuntu. Maybe we can keep it that weight. And then we know it's a font size of 16. Color, I'm going to paste the color in, and then it's center aligned, and it looks pretty good right there. So you notice that there is some little styling going around here, and we can copy that over. So if I hover over that, I'll see on the right here of my dev mode some of the stylings. But you don't want to copy everything word for word, because it's a little different on how Webflow works. And so one of the things you probably want to copy is the padding, and then probably the border radius and the border. I'm going to copy this border color, and we are working with character quotes. And then let's add a border, 1 pixel. That, so you can kind of see it's being bordered. I'm going to give it border radius of 4. And then last but not least, there seems to be a padding of 24 pixels across the board. And that's how you add it on the right. So we have this really cool section here. We're basically done with the quote. Now, you might be thinking, well, you know, it's supposed to be on the left, it's supposed to be on the right. So let's solve that issue as well. And by doing that, we will click on character lore, because remember, our character lore contains the description and the image. Description is going to be on the left, the image is going to be on the right. So by highlighting character lore, we have a few options for layout. And the most used options to do a typical 2-column layout will be flex. So you can see the instance I type in flex or clicked on it, it automatically defaults to horizontal layout. So it's going to be left and right. But for some instances, if you want this to still be up and down, you would click on vertical, and you can see it reverts back to how we normally had it. But in this case, because we're on our desktop, we want it left and right, and that looks pretty good. So above here, container, I'm actually gonna refer to a class that we already have, and we're going to steal some styles that we've already placed in the video a while ago. So that's how we're getting these little nice paddings all situated. So in character description, you can see that there's some type of gap here. And we're going to do the same by clicking on character description. And, character lore, I'm sorry, because that's where we added the flex in. And then there's going to be a section for gap. And that's where you're going to put in some number that you'll feel is right. You're going to be changing this depending on, how much spacing you want. So I'm going to leave 64 for now until we add more stuff. Maybe it'll be different. So you can see how everything is shaping up pretty well. What I did want to do on character quotes is, there's some spacing here we could do better about. And so that's why I'm going to actually use flex here as well. So on character quote, click on flex. We know that by clicking flex, it automatically wants to do this left and right thing, but let's switch it to vertical. Now it's up and down, and then let's use the gap here in order to have that little gap between our citation and our actual quote. Awesome. So now the last thing to do, and don't worry about the image going like left and right, it's because Webflow doesn't know what it's doing sometimes with some default values. So what we're actually going to do here is on character description, because character description and image are within a flex layout, now we have additional ways to tell how big these elements are within the layout. That's why you see this flex child additional properties. So if I click that open, you're going to see these sizing. And sizing is basically determining how you want something to be sized with. And so for our purposes, we want things to be equal left and right. So we're going to do grow if possible. And then for the character image, we're going to do the same thing, grow if possible. And then you can kind of see that by telling both sides to grow if possible, it's going to take as much space as possible. And, you know, for us, that means it's going to take 50% of the size and the other side is going to take 50%. So it's kind of like the magic of utilizing grow if possible. But, you know, let's say for my image, I didn't really want it to be that big. So I could actually shrink it to try to work around how it works. So again, I think Webflow doesn't do the greatest job at showing what these values actually do, because it actually does it differently in coding. So for the most part, just play around with the sizing to see how it works. And then the only best way to see it in live action is by publishing the page and then viewing it on your own desktop or a computer. So let's finish this out. I am going to character description and then above the quotes. So we're going to add another section. So character div, and we're actually going to put this up there above, and then we're going to call this, let's just call it character details. And then within the details, we're going to have, so I'm going to use a heading. And heading 2, you can see how our heading 2s are always styled to be something. So I'm going to type in that. In fact, I am going to create a class for heading 2 because it's not so big over here. It's 48 pixels. Oh, it's 38 pixels. Nope, not 30. I think it's different. Yeah, it's 48 pixels. Okay, it's actually the same size. So my eyes are tripping me. So within character details, we have more stuff, right? We're gonna put a paragraph. So I'm gonna click paragraph, copy this, paste it here. And I believe I already have styles for paragraph. So that's why I added in the top right. And I'm just gonna arbitrarily add new lines after some of this stuff. And it looks good. And then so that's another big paragraph. So I'm gonna actually, what you can do here, instead of like clicking add all the time, you can actually copy what you have here, paste it. And then let's see how this actually works. Yeah, it doesn't work that great. So what we want is each paragraph to be different. And I think I copied that wrong. So I missed a few words. So 1. Oops, let's copy this paragraph. Okay. Now, again, what I like to do is, because I want to use the gap property of flex instead of just like using margins all the time. So I'm going to click on character details, make it a flex layout. We know Webflow likes to do its thing, change it to vertical, and then gap, we will do 24 pixels or so. And then we got this cool thing going on. Now, As you can see, there's no gap between this paragraph and that. So what are we going to do? Same thing. Character description. Make it a flex layout. Make it vertical. And then put some gap in there. And now we have this really nice character page. I will unput this, take this out. That does its job. So what we also can do is for the character image, we can actually align it so that's in the center, but I think aligning it up top is probably gonna be good here. And then there we go. We just created one section of the website, and because we use components for the other one, we have the other parts of the website pretty much built. And there we go. We just created, let me open up OBS for a little bit. And basically 20 minutes, we created a page. And the coolest thing about this is that now this is a character template. So if I went up to home, and if I wanted to create a new page, I can actually steal a template, character template. This one is called Clean. And what I actually wanted to do first, I'm going to create a folder. So let me discard, I'm going to create a folder just because for the sake of this site, there's going to be characters, right? And then within that, I'm going to create a page using the character template, call this Clean, put this in the characters folder, and then create the page. And then magically, you're going to see that it imports that Clean because we use Clean as a standard template. But if I wanted to create another page, I hope so. Okay, yeah. Because I'm a free plan so far, it only allows me to create 2 pages. But ideally, what you would do is you create a page, use a template, and then you can switch out Clean to be, next character would be Honey. And then we can copy all that stuff to here, and then that's another page. So essentially, within, an hour, we can build out all the character pages with all the information that's needed, with all the images. And that's how quickly you can create a website. So thank you for following along with this little short tutorial. Continue the rest of the video if you wanted to learn a little bit more about Webflow and how I work with it. You'll see me struggling with some problems. I did show an idea of how to create components, so that'll be a good way for you to figure out how to do things like the navigation and the footer. I did show you how to do hover styles, so that'll be a good thing to watch. And then you'll see like some interesting things that I did with the form and so forth. So thank you for watching the video. We will probably get this website within 2 weeks, and so I'll be happy for my friend so he can have a really fleshed out website for once. And then on that, I will work on my actual portfolio, which hopefully will be launched before the end of the new year. All in all, have a good night. See ya. All right. Good afternoon, folks. Praying to the recording gods that this goes well for us, because last time I had an issue with some type of frame drop and everything was so PowerPoint presentation like that. I didn't really like that. I'm not sure what actually went on, but hopefully we got everything covered here. And today's episode, or rather step, is going to be a pretty important one. I'm pretty sure most of you guys were waiting for this, because it actually just takes whatever you built within the first 3 steps and putting it into a viewable platform such as Webflow. I am gonna cover specifically Webflow. If you're good at coding, you can do coding. If you're good at using Wix is kind of another platform to build websites. It might be very similar to Webflow, but because I work with Webflow and the clients I work with uses Webflow, it is my preferred tool of choice. And it's very easy to even just kind of like sell this as a service to other people, because you can get your clients to sign up for Webflow, and they will have their domain. You hook it up to their domain, and I just like Webflow having all the hosting and like little fundings that they always upgrade over time. I used to develop on WordPress, not anymore, just because of the sheer complexity it brings every year with patches and security risks. If you're not on top of that, then you can definitely get lost trying to work with it. But that is also another option that some people would take. So to recap from the last episode, I believe I showed the mockups, the final ones of my website. I might have tweaked this a little bit from the last time, but you can kind of see it's I did each section. This would be like the homepage. So I'll talk about some of my UI design, some things that I did with Caribou, and ideally each section at the website will have some case study, some information about it, and then a nice picture to go along with it. And then at the end, if people want to reach out to me, there's myriad of information they can do to connect with me. However, what we are going to do in this episode is actually, instead of working on my site, because the complicated thing about my website is that if I open it up over here, is that it's already built. So you can see all these different sections already laid out. And then if I were to kind of go through this process with my website, it's going to be a mixture of me deleting stuff and then me reorganizing things. And I didn't think that would be a great tutorial, because now I'm just like inflating a number of steps that may not particularly be relevant for you or for first timers that are just doing this. So I'm gonna leave that off. Maybe I'll make an episode of doing this, just so it's like a fun work with me type of video. But instead, what I'm gonna do is actually I'm gonna be working on a friend's website of mine. Oh, hello Yaji. Yeah, so let me close that. So this is a friend's website that I did not too long ago, a few weeks back, and the goal of this website was to get them off of WordPress, because WordPress was being more of a hindrance than a plus for them. And we design it in a way to basically kind of give out the message of what they're doing here. And so my friend actually authors a book called Son of Sin. You can see some logos here, and it's a cyberpunk fantasy book that recently just released the third book. And so what I wanted to do for them is just to create a more simplistic website that's easier for them to maintain in the future, as well as, again, make it more apparent of what you're doing on the site. So you're Basically, you want to come here, learn about the book, learn about the author, and finally buy the book. Make it easier for users to buy the book. And, you know, if they wanted to get more into detail, like, oh, what are the characters they can. You can see there's some simple pages for the shop. We don't need to make this super complicated because, you know, I always believe that a simple website just needs to do its thing. You know, an about page, and then, you know, you have your character pages for about the characters. So what we are going to do in this episode is just maybe one of these pages from start to finish. But as soon you will notice that there are similar elements on all of these pages, right? Like you have your navigation, you have our little call to action snippet here, and you have your footer. So the coolest thing is once you built out these things once, you almost kind of have like your whole website made, because now for each different pages, you only have to deal with like small things like this. And you can almost kind of tell that, you know, this is not too different from this. Maybe just this has a little more text, another image, and whatnot. So that's how you can efficiently create a website pretty fast and save a lot of time, is by having elements that are very repeatable and then working on them. And then very often, not often, just have little different things to make each page a little bit different. So it's not just a copy paste. All right, now that we covered that, let's see how we get first started. So the first thing we want to do is, so I'm in my Webflow account here. And yours might look like this. I'm not sure what a typical one might look like, because I am on a starter workspace, so I believe this is the free account. Because the only thing I pay for is the actual like my website only. There is an account for like freelancers to do Webflow where you can just kind of build infinite websites. But for now, since I'm only going to create like the homepage as like a tester version, I don't need to spend that much money on a freelancer account. So what we're going to do here is click on new site. And then as simple as that, we have a new site. And then we're going to just do a blank site. And then we're going to call this Son of Sin. Now you can work from a template. You know, I know some designers that do that, and that could make your life a little bit easier if you know what you're doing. But I feel like to get to that point of working from a template, if you understand how to actually like create a template or do the things by yourself, then it strengthens how you can manipulate a template later on. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to lay this out, because I want to show kind of like both sides of the spectrum here. Okay, so a little bit of Webflow is a few things. So I'm gonna okay, so my Figma has a limit. So let's do it like this. So this is the website. If I were to just click this plus button, and then let me type in text, click on this text block, you can see I have a text block here, and I can just double click on it to edit the text. And I can just type Son of Sin here. And on the top right, you'll see a little publish button here. And then for now, you can kind of see a staging build, which is basically always set to, some type of domain.webflow.io. And then your production is when you finally add a custom domain. So we won't worry about that now because we're not hooking this up to a real site. And then you just want to simply click publish to domain. It'll take some time depending on how much you have on the site already. Since we only have just a text, it'll be very quick. And then you can see that little confirmation that it's been published. Now, if I actually went to, you can choose this little arrow here. If you click on that, it'll actually direct you to your website. So you can see up top of here, sonofsin.webflow.io. If anyone looked at this now, you can actually see it here. Some other things you'll see on the bottom right, made in Webflow. That's just their way of watermarking until you've actually purchased a plan to remove that. Or sometimes, if you, not to be cheap about it, but if you just really want a website out and, you don't care if people know where you made it, you just want something out, you can definitely use this as a free website. Okay. So you might be thinking, oh, free website, then why don't I just do this all the time? Well, there's some limitations in here. I believe on the starter plan, you're limited to maybe 2 pages, 1 or 2 pages. And, you're not able to tap into some of these more cooler things with CMS, e-commerce, things like that. And I will probably create future tutorials on how to integrate these into website, because this will be more important for my portfolio sites where I can keep track of my case studies without having to build each page differently. It'll be dependent on how I build those pages, so we'll see how that works. So we have the home page with SonofSin, and then we have our idea on the left. So how do we get started here? Well, what I like to do first of all is, since this is a dark website, I will press Control and /, I believe, or /. Yeah, /. And so this is a little bit of a mess because of my screen. So I'm gonna kind of do something where it's gonna flip-flop between us, and I apologize if that adds any disturbance to your viewing, but it's kind of how I design and do this stuff, and it's always flip-flopping back and forth. So when I click on this frame, it's technically you want to name these frames, relevant to what they are. I'm pretty bad at labeling, so don't hire me for organization here. So if I clicked on it, on the right, I can see just a lot of different things. And if you work in Figma for a while, you'll understand what all these mean. So at the least, you'll know that this fill is referencing to the background of this whole thing. So I'm gonna simply just click on it. It'll highlight it all. I'm gonna copy it with Control-C, and then on my body here, what we want to do here is actually create a class, and I will amply name it body-dark. And that means anything that has this class, body-dark, will have the properties I set for it. Now, the only property I really want here is just the background. So if you scroll down on the right and then click on this background section, you'll see it. Sometimes it might be closed, so just be careful. If it is closed, collapsed, then click on it to uncollapse it. And then on the color, you would just simply type or paste the color. And then now you can see that we're using the same color here. So that's cool. And so if I were to, let's say, create another page, I hope I can create another page. Let me see here. Yeah, create a new page, and I call this, I don't know, let's just say contact page. You can see it's defaulted to white when I click on the left here because it doesn't have a class name. But when I give it an existing class, I can type it, or sometimes they'll just suggest it on the right here. So I'm glad they did suggest it. And I'm going to click on it. You can see it instantly taking this property color here. So that's awesome. So that's just an example of how classes work in Webflow. It'll be a continual thing that you'll learn over time as we build this page. So don't worry if you don't get it the first time here. So I'm going to delete this text block because no one needs it. And the other thing I wanted to do here is the newest thing to have in Webflow is it's a little purple plus button next to color. And that allows you to use variables. And variables is basically a way to simplify the language used for different things in this application. So if I were to say, hey, use that use that OA, 0A, 0A, 0A color, like you'll be like, okay, well, what language am I speaking? Unless you were a designer. But if I were to tell you use the dark background color, we can create a variable that is labeled that, and it will have this hex code. So what we want to do here is, first of all, I'll do it again. So when you see this little purple icon, click on that. And then since we don't have any, we want to create a new variable. So we're going to create it. You can see the value is going to be this hex code. And then the name of it, what I generally do is I'll usually like using the client's name, and then basically like what is that variable mainly used for. So mainly used for dark, it's a dark background. So I'm gonna send dark background. In fact, I might even I might want to rename this. And so when you hover over, you'll see like a little pencil icon on the right, and then you can rename this. So I'm just gonna abbreviate it, SOS dark background. All right, so we learned a little bit of a variable thing. You're gonna see me doing that for a few colors here just to make things simpler. But the greatest thing behind that is, let's say the dark background wasn't dark enough or it wasn't light enough. I could then go on the left. You'll see a little tab, variables, or you can press V for a shortcut key. So I press V, and at any time I want to, I can change how this dark background looks like. So if I want it to be red, so I just changed it to red, and what do you think will happen? Exactly. Anything that has that variable will be changed to the updated value. So that makes it very simple in case you had a client who's like, oh, you know, we changed our mind, our logo is going to be blue instead of green. So instead of having to go through each instance and changing all the blues to greens, if you've had a variable named logo color, then you can simply make that change without having to lose sanity trying to check every page for green or blue. So we're gonna reset this to what it was. Nice dark background. And now we're ready to start start this process. So the reason why I like Webflow is because Figma actually has a plugin that could be used not all the time, very sparsely you could use this, but it helps set up a lot of things that normally you would create on your own. And so what I like to do is use the plugin kind of as a launch point, and then I'll tweak it to how it needs to actually look. So what you want to do is on the bottom, there's going to be, if you're using the new UI layout of Figma, there's going to be basically a folding menu of actions here. And what you basically want to pull out is the actions here, because that's how you access the plugins and widgets over here. And so by clicking on that, we can search for any type of plugins. And so ideally look for Webflow plugin. And from here, I would click the first one. This is the one that we want. It's very simple. And, it'll tell you what's going on. I'll just gonna click run. It tells you some cool things. And then you can connect your accounts. And then I'm going to connect my account. And then I'm going to connect it to my workspace. All right, so successfully done. Now, ultimately, so choose your website. There you go. And I think that just helps organize like what you're copying from, but ultimately I'm not really caring about all that stuff. So let me hide this so that we can just see the plugin and things like that. All right, so what we want to do, well, we want to do this header here. And for my previous lesson, I did a little Figma masterclass on kind of like auto layouts and how to work with that. So please refer to that video if you don't understand auto layout that much. But you can see what I have here is a frame. And then inside the frame, there's just a lot of like different auto layouts going on here. One specifically for the navigation that hooks the navigation with like the button, and then auto layout that hooks the logo with the navigation, and then there's an auto layout that links the border with this, which I'm not too sure if we actually need it, but we're going to see how to actually work. Now, as you select certain elements, you will see on the left that there are things that the plugin can copy and things that it can't. And so that's a good indicator of whether what's laid out correctly or what's not. But how I like to do it is just kind of like think things in sections. So, I mean, as much as it's cool to like select this whole thing and be able to copy it over, maybe in the future there will be. I think it's better just to kind of do one point at a time, especially things like the navigation or maybe the footer. They are things that will always pop up on each page. So it's okay to like break things down to the bare minimum. So let's do the navigation, right? I'm going to select that and then press copy to Webflow. Now let's see what it actually does. I paste it here. Okay, so I had a, as you can kind of see, I had to do a few things that obviously can't, somehow I'm not logged in. So let me log back in. Just didn't like me. Okay. So I'm gonna paste that in. And then yeah, it's gonna say, oh, we can't copy the font, blah blah blah. And that's fine. There might be some conflicts here and there, but we will be able to figure out what we need to do. So you can automatically see that I didn't really like how I did the border. Like this was supposed to be a border. So I'm gonna select that and actually just delete it. Not really something we need. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring my navigator up. I'm gonna extend this a little bit more so that we have good enough space here. Okay. So now let's break down what is going on here. It's obviously took an image and, however you broke it up within Webflow, in Figma, it's going to break it up just like in Webflow. So that's why a lot of the stuff is kind of bloatware, and you don't really want this here because it treats everything as its own separate class. So that's why you have like text 2. It tries to be smart, that these are the same, so they'll have the same class. This is a black text, so that's why I changed to text 3. But we'll be able to change that easily. What I wanted to do is we're not going to worry about fonts. So fonts is less of our worry, and I'll teach you how to incorporate new fonts in. And so how do we set this up? Our site is kind of based on like things being centered, and off the bat, the website we have here, I think follows like some type of MacBook Pro, like 16-inch MacBook Pro. Obviously, I'm working on a computer that has a bigger sign screen than that. So one of the first things we want to do here is you can see there's a max width here. When I click on frame file. First of all, actually, let me kind of rewind back to help you guys start labeling this so you guys can follow along. Otherwise, this is something I'm used to. But for maybe first-time users, you might get confused, like, what are these names? So let's actually rename these to be what they are. So frame 35 has my whole navigation, right? So I'm going to rename this actually, and by clicking on frame 35, like either inside or, you can click rename class here, and I'm going to name this navigation. And so it's much easier to know if you were like looking around, like this is my navigation. And then, so inside of it, you'll see another thing that kind of holds them both as well. So I'm also going to call this not navigation, but instead I am going to call this navigation container. That's just the word container as, you know, something that holds whatever your element is. So inside frame 34, I'm going to rename this to navigation. And I kind of apologize that a lot of this is very unscripted because I'm kind of going through this the first pass. And so I think the coolest part is you get to see how problems arise and how we're going to fix it. Image 14. It's not just an image, that's our brand. So let's call that brand logo. And then here is our actual navigation, but we will call it, let's call it menu container, right? Because this container is holding not only this thing, but also the button. So the container is going to hold all this stuff. We're going to name frame 2 to become menu, then frame 1. Now, ideally, you'll just recognize that this is a button, and this button is probably going to be used in many different ways. And so for me, I'll call it primary button, because as we look on our website, you can see that we use this yellow button primarily to get people to click on. So that's awesome. So navigation container, we're going back here. Again, I'm not designing just for one certain desktop or MacBook, so we want to get rid of this Mac Swift. Actually, yeah, we'll click on here and then choose none. And then the same thing here. When we click on an actual navigation, we just click on none. But for container, we kind of want it a little bit, you know, we don't want things hit side from side. And so that's where we could actually define some type of padding here. And I think what I had here is, so what I'm going to do is ungroup. Oops, that is not what I want to do. I'm going to ungroup this a little bit because I don't want to include that border. We'll figure that out later. But if I hold Alt, you can see that I have some view paddings. It's 40 from the left, 40 from the right, 35 and 39. But we can probably assume this should have been 35. And we can fix that in a mock-up or whatnot. Oopsies. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna steal that here, and oops, you just know that, you know, top and bottom is 35 and left and right is 40. Cool, right? So we have our navigation like pretty much squared away. Again, you can come in here to tweak things. So if I went to the menu, you can see that there's a gap of 64 pixels, but what if I didn't want that? What if I wanted the navigation to be a little bit shorter? Then you can change the layout up here to however you want. So ideally for me, if I looked up here, they are 64. So I will just actually leave it where it was. And then let's do a little investigation here with the text and text 2. Like, you never want to leave it like this. And in fact, you want to rename this. The blue one is basically like current page. Or actually, let's do current nav. And then these regular ones are just nav. So you can see how on the left, it just changes each one to nav. And that's fine. And then here we will name it to primary button text, because it's very specific. And there we go. We have a navigation. So one other thing we want to do with this is add this little border. And to do that, we will click on our, let's see, what do we want? Yeah, we can click on the navigation itself. Scroll down here and then click the bottom border here, because we want bottom border one width. And I'm gonna put white just for now so that we can kind of see it. And then switching back to here, I will see how we can steal this. The easiest way is going to be, so I believe if you have Figma, you should have access to dev mode. And by switching to that, you can kind of see what we have here. But I think on, let's see. I think it's a little bit different. And we might have to create a variable for this. So let's create a variable. And maybe that doesn't work either. I wonder if we can do something custom here. So I'm just gonna, yeah, so we can't do custom here. So let me do color here. And what can we do here? So I guess that's one of the things that's not great about Webflow, is that it can't do gradients. So I think for the interest of time, because I know how I would do this, and I guess we'll do it. But basically what we will do is within navigation, we're going to create a div block. Maybe outside of navigation. Yeah. Okay. And then on this div block, we'll make it width of 100%, so it expands to full width, but the height is only 1 pixel. And then for this, we will give it a background, because we can give it a gradient background. And we will unfortunately have to kind of get out of dev mode and kind of copy this here. So let me scoot this over. Let me scoot this over. Let me add points here. So at 0, we are using this color. At 44, I mean technically 44%. Oops, we're using this little blue color. Ouch. And then as it goes towards the end, we'll use the gray. So I'm gonna put that to 50%. And I think that should work. So if we took navigation, got rid of that border by clicking, making sure the style is out. You can see the white is gone. And then if we name this to actually become gradient border, we can probably reuse this over time. And you can see that there's extra points in here that we don't want. Oops. And I'm trying to see. Or let me see. Oh, because it's black. You don't want that. And I think I know the problem is it's not showing a lot of the grays. And let me artificially okay, so you can kind of see that I rotated the gradient differently, and so it needs to be, there we go. So maybe I'll put that to 10 and I'll put this to 90. And then now I can set this to 1 pixel. And then you have that little shiny thing there. All right. Now we want to see the reason why there's a gap between the border and there is because up here you can see it was stealing some type of layout from Figma. If I went to up to navigation container and see that gap, so we just simply want to zero that out. So now that border is right there. And now that I look at it again, I will just actually keep this 0. Oops. 100. All right, so this is navigation. And if I were to, let's say, copy this and went to my contact page and put the navigation there, I have it. You know, it's done. It does what it needs to do. But what I wanted to show is anything that you're going to have that's very constant and it's going to show up on every single page, you'll want to make a component out of it. Guys, I had to basically cut this video so that I could show you what I was trying to do with components here. And so what we have here is we are in our home page, just to show you that. And, you know, we have our body class, we have our navigation container that we fully fleshed out. This is our navigation. We have all the pieces towards it, you know, creating our button, things like that. And this is something that we're going to consider basically permanent that's going to show on every single page. No matter if you're on a character page, monster, or a connect page, or purchase page, we need some type of primary navigation that sits on top. And so what I wanted to do is to show you that you guys actually can create this as a component, so that when you do create further pages, it becomes easier to kind of bring this element from page to page. And if by chance you had to change a part of this element, you don't have to do it for all the pages. You can just change the component itself, and then it'll reflect the other pages. And so by clicking on my navigation container, I am going to right click it. And then you can see there's an option to create a component out of this. And you can see that there's a nice keyboard shortcut for Control-Shift-A, but we will just right click it and create the component. Oops. Now, the thing with Figma, the thing with Webflow is sometimes, like when you right click on something, it's not going to give you the actual thing. So you can actually right click on this section over here, because I want the whole container to be the whole thing. I don't want to separate it and have to worry that, oh, I'm missing a higher level hierarchy class. So we got our container, we right click it, we are going to create a component. We're going to call this the navigation and create it. So you'll notice that Webflow will instantly take you to this screen to kind of edit your component, and you can tell by this little special green highlighted button that you're inside of your navigation component. So again, if I were to change any of this, then it will automatically change on any sites, on any pages that will use this component. So if I go to home, you'll notice that it now looks green. That's just how it determines what our components are not. And if I went to my contact page, anytime I'll be like, oh, I need a navigation, I can just go on the left. There's going to be a little menu for components. It's going to be a navigation. And the cool thing is they'll even show you how many times you're using this. And, let's say you had 5 pages and your this only shows 4, then maybe you're missing a navigation somewhere, or maybe it's intended, whatever your use case is. So if I click on this, it'll automatically bring all the styles, all the things that are necessary for navigation, and put it here. And now you don't have to keep on recreating this thing, or keep on having to copy paste from a different page. You just go to components, click it, and you're good to go. All right, so we got the navigation done. That's basically one part of the site done. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I will show you. Let's look at this section. Actually, let's do this section. A little bit easier. Let's do the footer. Just because it's, if you make the top, you make the bottom. And so we will, again, find our plugin. Sometimes it just disappears out of nowhere. I don't know why. Select my little thing. Copy the Webflow. Now you can kind of see that, I just kind of lay out this part of it. So in your mind, you're going to need to know that you're going to need some type of container or wrapper to hold this. So we will see quickly what I mean by that. And so I pasted that in. And then you can see it did its best to put everything here. Some little weird oddities here, mainly because I believe because I wasn't a good labeler over here, it tries to basically steal styles from others. So this is stealing styles from up here. That's why that navigation looks a little bit odd, but we can really fix that easily. So let's get on to it. So this is our frame. We will call this frame as, let's rename this to footer. You know, let's just go with the flow, footer container. And then this one, we will actually delete this and call this footer navigation. And now you might already notice, like, well, I just messed up some of the classes, and so it kind of like just defaults to normal. And so how to get it to be horizontally aligned, we will just use this flex. So now it's flexed horizontally because we're using this direction horizontal. But if I wanted to do vertical, I click on vertical, easy peasy. Now I wanted some space in between. So what do I have here? So I still had 64. And then in this gap section, purposely put 64 in. And then now we have all that stuff here. So another thing here is container. We don't want it just to be 790 pixel. So again, we'll click none. And now it's all stretched out. You can kind of see I have a border here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click into navigation because I know my border is part of that. So I'm going to, on the left, copy my border here. On the top here, go back to my home page and put the border here. And I will put it, you know, right there. Actually, let's do it here. So it's part of the footer container. And then what we can do is always maybe put an arbitrary pixel for that. So now there's kind of see the difference between the top and the bottom. Got a logo, we got interesting enough, it took a picture of this frame, which I didn't really like. That's not great that it did that. So how do we fix that? So I'm going to ungroup a few things. And then maybe I can copy this specific layout into Webflow. And I wonder if that did something here. No. It looks like it's thinking. And I might have just broken it. So in those cases, sometimes you just got to delete it and do it yourself. And so let's continue without worrying about that. And now I'm gonna name this footer nav. But I actually don't. So this is just the hover style of the footer nav. So we actually just want this to be let's name this so the only thing I don't like about Webflow is it's really difficult to like change your mind of how you want to name things, because once you name things, it stays permanent. And you have to kind of go out of your way to either like figure out another naming scheme for what you want to do, or kind of like reverse back and go back to, I think they have like a style, yeah, like a style selector here, and you're able to come back and like delete the ones you don't want, rename the ones that you do want. And so that is the only big problem using this Figma to Webflow, is that I wish it didn't wish it wasn't too literal of like the class names, but I get it because it's trying to import styles at the same time. All right, so I'm gonna keep this, let's see, rename this to copyright text. Just make that smaller. And then we're gonna rename this as the footer logo, because that's fine as it is. So how do I add little hover? Let's see. Let me steal this color. So I'm going to click on here, and then on the right, top right, you'll see a way to be able to add different states. So if I click on hover, so this means this menu link on hover is going to use this. And then so now when I hover on these things, you'll see it works. Okay, so now after this, we have navigation. And so what we're gonna do is create a div, because we want to mimic this little form here. And I'm gonna call it the newsletter form container. Oops, I spelled that totally wrong. And the worst part of it is because I just misspelled that. So if I went to style selector, okay, sometimes it'll even show up here, and like now you have like two random containers for no reason. Form container, and technically speaking, this will probably be some type of embedded form from MailChimp or something. So because I know that's going to happen, that's why I'm going to leave it here for a little bit. And we're going to put in the header text, and I just choose header 4, and then get updates on Son of Sin. We know this is going to be white, and it's going to be all capitalized. All right, and then underneath there, we want to create probably a form block. This is just going to help us style the forms, but not necessarily going to be the form itself. That's why I'm going to name this newsletter form, because this newsletter form is going to look different than other different forms that's going to be on a website. So we might not need that. but let's see, newsletter form input. We know the background is going to be this color. Did we put a border around it? Nope, no border. So let's get rid of the border. No border. It has a slight border radius, so let's steal that. Border radius. And then it has a button. So we have our button here that we are going to rightfully, since all the buttons going to be looking the same, we can just call it the primary button. Typography is going to be black. Now we want these on the same line, so we will do special layout flex. And then there's a way to oops. Got it centered. But I want to say there's a way to actually be the same size here. So let me work this up a little bit here. Padding here, that's fine. No. Form block. There you go. 100%. 100%, and aligning this to stretch will just match both things together. And now that I have like rounded edges, and that edges might not look so good. So what I want to do here is maybe specifically for newsletter form, I will do something where it's where there's no gap. And then for my eyesight is playing with me for borders, I will basically zero out those. Oopsies. And it looks like there might have been... Okay. Maybe it looks a little bit better. So what we can do here, because we kind of have some spacing for that, so size, we can put a relatively min width of that, and then newsletter form, we could just make sure centered. Type. And then so very similar. Work on this a little bit. Okay. The idea is we got our footer. So what I'm going to do from here is right click footer, create a component, call it the footer. And when I go back, it just kind of keeps things clean because you know this is going to show up on every single page. And what I actually will do here is for the footer container, instead of margin here, can I do padding? Oops, not margins, padding. That way, if I were to view this site, you know, let's try that. Let's publish this. We got some cool stuff going on. All right, we are going to work on another section. And what I did want to do this time around is kind of do it from scratch rather than having you rely on a plugin. Because, like I said, sometimes there's good things about a plugin, bad things about a plugin. And ultimately, if you know how to do this without everything, then more power to you when you do it with a plugin or something that's even going to be even more better to use in the future. All right, got my coffee break. So we're going to work on this little section here. It's generally called like a, kind of like a CTA section. So off the bat, what I'm going to do is I wanted to let's see how I want to do this. Because I don't have any images saved from here. So I wonder if I can. Okay, I can do that. This is just that, so I can export that. And what we're going to do is export go to my desktop. Yeah. Okay. So we're on our homepage. We're going to make a new section. And what I always like to do is just think about things in the structure and order. And Webflow does a good job of this, of like having it kind of all in these little buckets of ideas. And apparently there's some new stuff I didn't know, but always think about section, containers, and then your elements. So section, containers, elements. So if you always follow that structure, then you'll always have a really good foundation for everything that you build. Because section is basically like your it's like a chapter, right? It's defining what a chapter is. And, anybody can go to a certain section. And then within that, you'll have your container. Container is more of just like, how big is that chapter? You can see that we have predefined styles for a container. And so we'll work on our own container size. So what we want to do is give this a class of container. And then we don't want a max width. Oops, we just want it none. And then for the section, because we want to follow in line with our navigation, we're going to give it a padding of 40 from the left and 40 from the right. And then maybe, to follow in line with padding, we'll do 35 for those. So we have the thing in the middle. And what are we trying to mimic here? Well, we just got a few headers, text, and a button. So within a container, I will now create a div, and this will be called what we're trying to build. So to me, this is a CTA. CTA block, I guess. And then we know there's going to be a header in there. So if I type in heading, and feel free to slow this video because I am kind of going fast on how I'm navigating on the left side. So this will be heading to, but we'll just call this specifically CTA header. Just that way it could be a little special. And we know this is going to be white, and it's going to have this text. But I don't like using all caps. I like using CSS to define what the text looks like rather than actual typing. So CTA header, and then we just said that we want it to all caps, and it's going to be in the center. And then we have a paragraph. So after all this, click plus button, and I believe there's a shortcut key actually. There's a, was it Control E? Yeah, Control E. Brings up the search menu, and then you can just type in paragraph or whatever. And again, I'll call this specifically CTA paragraph because it might be different from other paragraphs we use. Type that in here, and it looks like we did. Did want some spacing there. This was 20. So do we have? Okay. We actually have this font here. Oops. And we want this to be white. And the size is somewhere around here. Right here. We can see that is 36. But I always like to, I'll use 8, so. Blah, 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 blah. And then we see that there's a button. So what we can do is Control E, type in button. And then we know this is a primary button. Cool. Now, we know our CTA block doesn't need to be that big. In fact, we have a little kind of arbitrary size of 736. So I'm going to copy that. And what we can do is for the CTA block, we can give it a max width, 736. Make sure this is flex. Put it center. And make sure this is flex and centered. In CTA, again, because we already created, nope, we just want this to be 32. And then change this to connect with us. And then something I'll do for primary button is because it is all caps, we can now add that style there. And then you can kind of see it also filling in the styles of wherever we're using similar class names. All right, so obviously this section is before the footer, and ironically this section will have we'll have gradient border, so we can put it on top of there. And then for the section, okay, now we can put a background image to this. So we click background here, and then I could look for an image. Now, because this is a special section, I can even add another combo class to this called CTA section. That way, if I wanted this to be a little bit bigger, I can give it a min height. Let's see what I have here. I have like 440. So min height of 440 pixels. And then I will add a little thing here, centered container. That way I can put a little height here, if that works. Or maybe I need to put it here. So you can kind of see there's a lot of back and forth. So what I don't like here is on this footer, I don't like the padding, but I want the margin. There we go. No, I think that's fine. Okay. And for this one, I think I have to stretch it. Yeah, so I created a flex on the section and I was able to work with it. I don't think I need any of these special height thing. But as long as things are flexed with each other, then they can basically respond to what they need. Let's see. Oops, I didn't want to do that. All right, so we did that, and I will check what I have. Okay, so this has already been an hour and half an hour, hour and a half, but you can kind of see how that works. I will probably at the end do a time lapse of me doing the other section, just to show how easy it is done. And if you wanted to do some type of, slow it down to like 0.25 speed, then you should be good to go to catch up on what I'm doing. But obviously the tutorial is just mainly how easy it is to transfer from one thing to the other. A few little Webflow techniques and tips that I wanted to kind of ingrain with you, pass by you, and I will try to edit some of the stuff here so it's not too wordy. But all in all, look how simple it is. If I were to publish the site one more time, bada bing, bada boom. Click on it here, and cool, we have a website. I mean, it doesn't look really nice because, like I said, see how important having the right fonts kind of changes the feel of the website. So once we put that in, make it look pretty good. And then once we put the imagery in, this will definitely look better than what it currently is. So we'll work on that. And on the next episode, we'll basically review what I've done. I should have this done by next week. So take care, guys, and hope you enjoy it.